Jason. It's my job to stump. Hey everybody, this is Carrie Hoffmeister with Carrie On Abundant TV, and I am so excited to have with me Zane and Donna King. Guys, thanks so much for chatting with me today.
Thank you for having us, Carrie. We are so blessed to be here and hoping that our story can reach out and help somebody else. That is our prayer. And so we're just blessed to be here with you. And we've enjoyed your show, by the way.
Yeah.
On a side note, we've been consuming your wonderful shows and we have just been loving it. What a great ministry you have. So thank you for serving the way you do.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. You guys are so sweet.
Yes.
Yeah, we're grateful for you, grateful for the opportunity to chat with you today. So
Yes.
yeah.
They are seriously the sweetest. I've only talked to them for about 10 minutes and I'm like, can we be best friends?
Yes, please.
Yes.
I'm a former Michigander. You're a new Michigander. So we just
Yes.
forgot about each other, didn't we?
Yes, that's true. We're actually just going to let you guys go ahead and start with some background and just kind of lead into where you are today.
Sure.
Love it. Love it. You want to start, babe?
Well, we'll start by telling you that we have a big family, and
Yes.
and I have a little story I often tell that you got to be careful what you pray for. I grew up an only child. You guys talked about Michigan. I grew up in Arkansas
On a pig trail.
Well,
I mean, he didn't live on the actual pig trail, but the house was.
I don't know. It might have been a pig trail. Yeah, it might have been. Anyway, I'm from Arkansas, and I grew up an only child, as I said, and practicing music and kind of a lonely little world. And so for some reason, God just put this desire in my heart that I wanted to have a big family. And so I had my first children were born as twins on the 4th of July in 1998.
Wow.
And so I got two
That was the first,
right in the beginning.
the first part of God's answers.
And then I met this lady and she had 4 kids. We have a blended family. So then I got 4 more. And so we have 6 kids. We have 6 grandkids. Had a daughter that just got married. And so now we got more son-in-law. And I mean, it's just our family is like a big table.
Yeah.
And
several tables.
Yeah. So that's the first part of our stories. We have a big family. And but yeah, when we first got married, and I'll let Donna kind of share with you some of the challenges and really kind of right out of the gate from the first time we got married.
Yes, of course. I was a single mom with my daughter who was, the other children had grown and gone off to college, or I had an eldest daughter who was married, but my youngest daughter was still with me, and I was learning to navigate this new thing that had happened with us, and she was struggling, and I wasn't dating. Actually, God set Zane and I up on our first date for sure, because I was very focused on taking care of my teenage daughter and trying to figure myself out, really. I was needing to figure out me and my journey. And so, I had a meeting filling in for an A&R director at the record label that I was working with at the time. And Zane was the producer on the project. So we were going through these songs and we already knew each other. We had crossed paths in the music industry for various reasons.
Oh, wow.
And we were like agreeing on every song for this particular record that was coming up and for every same reason. And at the end we were leaving and he goes, we should catch up. Let's grab coffee or whatever it was. I don't even remember. This was more than 14 years ago.
Yeah.
And so we did, and we sat and talked for 4 hours.
Yes.
And Zane says, what do you always tell people? I know.
I mean, I talked for like 15 minutes. So.
It could be true. It could be true. But anyway, no, we just caught up. And I remember thinking to myself 2 days later, I'd called a moratorium at that point on dating.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking 2 days later, I hope he calls me, and then I'm like, "No, you don't. No, you don't." But I did, and he did, and the Lord took it from there, and, we were married 2 years later,
Yeah.
but he was so patient with
Mm.
our situation, with my situation, and my sweet girl, and loved her so well from the
Yeah.
very beginning, and it was quite incredible. But yeah, she had a struggle. But what we've learned to share with people is it's more important that we tell you the story that you need to hear for you.
Mhm.
Because we're going to have struggling kids, we're going to have struggling sisters and brothers, and mothers and fathers, and uncles and aunts and cousins and friends. But the only person that we can get in front of God with or at his feet and take care of is ourselves. We can
Right.
carry the others to him, and that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
But as far as who we can change, it's
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And so I started out my journey with my daughter when I finally decided to go to my first what's called Al-Anon meeting, which is a meeting for family members of those who are struggling with addictions or alcoholism. And the first time I walked in that room, Carrie, and I was like, I come here to get advice on how to fix my daughter, like my child. And they were all doing what they do in Al-Anon, which is you don't crosstalk and you don't. And I was cross talking to everybody. They would share something like, what do I do about this with her? And what do I do? And they were so patient. And I was so not taking the Al Anon route, And they were so patient with me. I was clueless. I went in there thinking, I'm getting answers on how to
Mm.
fix someone else that I love so deeply and so dearly. There aren't words to describe that. The only love greater is God's love, right? Than
Yeah.
a mother, a parent love. So anyway, I was quickly learned about cross talking and quickly quieted down and listened and quickly started to realize that there was a job that I needed to do in me.
Yeah.
And they came alongside me. And then we ended up
Yeah.
finding a group exclusively for parents. I'll let you take
Right.
it from there.
But it took a while because it's not like just because you get to the point you're desperate. You're so desperate to know what you can do to fix the situation, to change the situation. You would do anything. You come to that point with your kids, and Donna often describes it like for a mother when their kids is running out towards a street. I mean, your initial reaction is just to run to get them out of the street, out of harm's way, and that's what's happening with addiction and alcoholism. And you see the danger, and you want to control that danger and take it away, and through time we learned that is so difficult, and if you're not careful, you actually enable the
Mm.
behavior that it only gets worse. And
100%.
so we married, and so while she's beginning to attend those meetings and we're beginning to kind of walk this daily in our lives, and some really hard roads, I'm kind of just at that point where like, hmm, seem like just make better choices and just do,
Like, can't they just stop it?
just stop it, and
Easy.
I mean, and I was actually, I think 40 something years old, and I had never really, yeah, I had known alcoholics and people that had been addicted to drugs and things like that, but it didn't really come home to me. And I just thought kind of the common knowledge of just like, well, just don't do that, and everything will be okay. And what we learned early is that addiction and alcoholism, when it's in a family, and
Mm.
that's like always, it is a family disease. And then
Yes.
when we begin to hear those words, family disease, now we knew we were a family, but what does that mean? It's a disease. And then we begin to learn about what it means. There's things that happen in physically and mentally, emotionally, and all of those kinds of things. And so it's not like we've stopped immediately saying, okay, you don't know how to fix our kids, so we're gonna figure
That's
this out
right.
somewhere else.
Perfect. Thank you for
And they taught
telling
us
that
this thing that said,
story.
keep coming back. It works if you work it.
Yeah.
We're like, what work it? What does that mean? Keep coming back. Well, keep coming back. Okay, I'll do that. But what does it mean to work it? And then we'll fast forward here just a tad because my son, he was very young and began to exhibit some very bad behavior. And we were like, again, thinking, okay, he's just kind of went off the rails a little bit, and we'll fix that, and he'll get back on and be fine.
Yeah.
It was not the case. I mean, one sober house after another, and through his teenage life, it just was really hard roads. And but together. So I love to tell this part of the story, Carrie, because look what God was doing.
Mm.
And we were back there in that room listening to music for that record and that business we were doing. And then went to the restaurant, we talked for 4 hours, and look what God was doing, putting me in her life. And then at the same time, this challenge lay ahead for my family, my son. And I just see it today as I look back on all that, is just God was caring for my family and and moving pieces of the puzzle around that only today it's a miracle that he did that.
Yeah.
And I am so thankful for it. So yeah, that's the beginning of our story, beginning of the family dynamics that we were dealing with in those early years,
Yeah.
and
And
beginning to learn how to navigate some of it.
exactly. And to fill in kind of the couple things, one thing is this, and I want to say this to those that are watching today. I think it's so important for you to know that if you're going through this, we understand your loneliness.
Mm,
You know, when a child is diagnosed with cancer or type 1 diabetes or some struggle, like, and you're, as a parent, you're heartbroken and you're scared and you don't know what to do, like, people show up at your door with casseroles.
yeah,
You know, this is the no casserole struggle. Your
yeah,
children walking through alcoholism or addiction. Nobody shows up at your door with a casserole and you feel alone. And
mm,
that's why finding this community was so pinnacle for
yeah,
us. But we will tell you, and Zane has made it, he's got such a great point, that there was so much in between time where we had so much to learn. And just like our kids going through growing and learning and then relapsing and struggling or hitting a rock bottom or hitting more than one rock bottom,
mm,
we did too with our journey on how to navigate ourselves and how to react to them in it. And so I have to tell you, we are both songwriters. We do our own music as well. And you know, life, I think you had shared this. You and I had talked about this, how this was so it's so paralyzing, right?
mm,
When you're
yeah,
going through trouble with your
yeah.
family, that and your kids especially, that you love, it's so paralyzing that you stop wanting to go. And I want you to share that, because you put it perfectly, like, I stopped wanting to go
Well,
this, I stop.
right. And so it is really the second part of, once we began down this road, Carrie, and our kids were out of control, and things were just, we didn't know what to do. And this was not just months. I mean, this was over periods
Years.
of years. And but we begin to notice that, hey, I don't want to go out to eat. I don't want to exercise. I I will do my work, but I'll just do whatever minimum that I need to do.
Not
And
sleeping well.
so we understand what it means to really, what we call, to hit our rock bottom. And so what we're going to continue to share here with you, and I'll kick it back to you because we're obviously doing a lot of talking here, but I know that we had to find a way to get on the path to peace and begin to understand that we could take something back. And it's just such a critical point. And I know people today listening, there are probably many out there that know what we're talking about.
Mhm.
And now they know that, yes, I wake up, I don't have anything else on my mind, and I can't, this is just consuming me, and it's lonely. And even if you have a spouse that you're walking through with it, I mean, it's just so very difficult.
Yeah. And if I can tell now, I don't want to, I know we're like, hi, everybody. I'm just talking about sharing. But if you have a question or you want to, interject at any point, please do. But I was just thinking of a part of the story that was such a turning point for me. Um, my daughter had gone missing, and it was heart-wrecking. I was scared. And normally, what I would have done in the past, in the past, we're phone tracking, we're location searching, we're doing all the things. But normally I would have been 24/7. We might have brought lunch boxes into the car and driven for hours a day and night. But we were learning to create some space, first of all, to give our beautiful children the dignity of their own recovery.
That's
This
good.
is one of the pinnacle things. Like, it's hard to understand that they deserve that, and they deserve that space as much as we deserve our peace and our learning how to navigate life amidst a difficult thing, being able to hold joy and that angst in the same
Yeah.
set of hands,
In the
and being
same
able to
hour.
in
Yeah.
the same hour, and being able to give that to Jesus, like, on the repeat, right? And so one day I had a songwriting appointment. She had been missing. Zane had a meeting, and he decided to drive by one spot on the way, which was totally okay. You can pick and choose what you feel that you have prayed over and is enough to do, but not too much. You know what I mean? And he drove by, and he saw what he believed was her car. But instead of stopping everything, he headed to his meeting, and I finished my co-write, which was kind of miraculous, Carrie,
Yeah.
because normally to know where she might be and having had her been missing for days, I just wanted to get in the car and go. But God said, wait. And I did. And I finished that co-write, and I got in the car. And as I headed to that place that he told me he saw the car, I turned in and she was pulling out. Now, bear in mind, it was a large building. I would have never known where she was if the car was still parked. It was God's timing.
Mhm.
And when she saw me and I saw her, she jumped out of the car and ran toward the window and banged on it like she was upset that I had found her once again, you know. And she acted that way and probably felt that for a second. And then she dissolved, and her hands ran down the window and her tears ran down her face. And she said, Mama, take me out of here.
Mm.
And it was, I believe, although she had more rock bottoms to face in her future, I believe it was the turning point. But Carrie, if I hadn't allowed her the dignity of her own journey and her own recovery, she may not have found that. But I tell you that story not to tell her story, because so much of our children's story, you'll learn that we don't tell tons of details because it's their story to tell. What we tell is our story,
Right.
how I learned to wait and look what God did.
Yeah.
You know
And
what I
our
mean?
recovery.
In our
Yeah,
recovery.
which is kind of mind blowing probably to a lot of people to when they first really hear that concept, our recovery. What do they mean by that? So,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
One of the things that we did, we took to God's word a lot, to remember that He's exceedingly abundantly able to do above all that we could ask or think. Or how about that? If we are who are sinners want to do good things for our children, then imagine how much more God wants to do, how much more He loves them. That's out of Matthew, 7:11. That's kind of a little synopsis of that verse. So yeah, it's been amazing.
Oh, gosh, I'm like a little bit speechless. Your story has already really blessed me, made me really emotional. um, I think it's always such a beautiful thing when we, as people, as humans, as Christians, we take something like that and then we say, "Well, Lord, how can you change me, or what in me needs to be changed, or how can you use me?" Because as a parent, I can't imagine going through that and not running after her or chasing her in that moment, but listening to God and him saying, "Wait," um, says a lot about your faith and you as people in general, but thank you for sharing that. So, I do have a lot of questions, and, I know other people have a lot of questions. I guess my first question, though, is how are they now?
That's a great question.
It is a great question. Good.
Really
And
good.
we often tell this part of it. We'll say, first of all, it's one day at a time.
Mhm.
Today, all of our children are reasonably okay. And so, and people that has walked these kind of roads, they understand that kind of language that, you have an ideal thing when that you would like for your kids often. And it doesn't matter whether they're on a road to recovery or not. Uh, it just doesn't always go the way you think it's going to go.
Mhm.
But today, they are very very happy and content
Centered,
and centered.
thriving,
Yeah, and
focused on
yeah,
that God
yeah,
has given them a new path,
right.
and they're doing great in
But how are we? And
it.
it's every single day. And let me I want to give a little quick tool. Uh, I learned something very early on, called the Serenity Prayer, and I began to recite that daily, and it would kind of help me a little bit. And then I began to really understand it. It's simply, God grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So it's
Mhm.
three parts there. And Carrie, what I want to share with your audience today is take that prayer. And if you're struggling right now, I mean, take that prayer and write it down and recite those words, learn them. But more importantly, get this: God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. So, serenity kind of parallel also with peace. So, one of the things when everything's raging out of control,
Mhm.
we deserve and we need peace. And you kind of have to take charge of that. So, but all those things you cannot change, you have to accept that. And the courage to change the things that I can. And guess what? What we discovered was we couldn't change our kids.
Mhm.
We could change us, me. That's the only thing I can really change at the end of the day. And then there comes that wisdom to know the difference. And then that's when finally it hit me. I need to work these steps. I need to step number one, I need to start right there.
Exactly. And when we do, suddenly, when we get out of the way, suddenly it's a relief. You're putting a lot of, feel like they begin to, okay, whew,
Yeah.
space. Now I can,
Yeah.
and they do their own journey. We tell our kids, all 6 of them actually, that we're so incredibly proud of them. And, for all the things that our kids have faced, the strugglers, we say, we look up to you. You are brave. You are courageous. I know that parents want their kids to look up to them, but and I feel like our kids, there are probably things they like about us. I don't know. We try, but I know they love us. They show us that. But we are proud of them and we
Yeah.
look up to them.
Yes, that's right. And so I would encourage, if someone feels that they're relating to what we've gone through in our life and our journey, then those really first fundamental steps: find community,
Mhm.
and then secondly, be willing to begin to walk and work those steps yourself, and begin to grab hold of those tools that are available to you. And you will not only begin to feel serenity and peace coming back to yourself, and going out to eat again and maybe exercising some more, you will then, in time, not immediately, but in time, you might see that the lack of you always enabling and being able to say no, which is a full sentence, by the way, it's going to create a new dynamic that in time you might see them say, wow, that was a changing, and that was a really critical point.
Yeah.
Yeah. What you both said actually leads into some of these questions that were asked, especially what you said, Donna, about your other children. I actually have a friend that she is going through, one of her daughters is in addiction, and that daughter had a child that my friend now is raising.
Oh yeah.
And she has other kids as well. And so her question was, how about the rebuilding of sibling relationships? Because she goes on to explain that as a parent, you watch them grow up and create these memories together, and just to grow and bond with each other, and then come to a place where the only time that they're getting together is at when she has to bribe them for Mother's Day. I just want all my kids together. And so her question is, how do you rebuild that with the sibling relationships?
Okay, I think that's an awesome question, and
Yeah.
it's so interesting. We want all of our children to get along with each other and have the best relationship, but it once again comes back to like we have to let them figure that out with each other. I think just encouraging the sibling. Now, in some cases, if it's a younger child situation, there's Alateen, which we highly recommend, or Celebrate Recovery has some great, amazing tools. And
Yeah.
different people choose their different journey to
Right.
get there. You know what I mean? As long as it's centered on God, and it's centered on the fact that God is the only one we can really rely on to
Yeah.
make a difference,
Mhm.
great. So I would encourage them to encourage their hurting children who miss that relationship to seek their own help
Yeah.
in going through that, because it feels like it should just be like, I don't, this should just not be like this. They kind of have the same similar feelings that we
Yeah.
do, like, stop it, but sometimes you just have to let them work it out with each other.
So there's this word we call qualifier. And I love that you mentioned this because go back to what I said earlier about family disease.
Mhm.
So parents and children who interact with addiction and alcoholism, it's a family disease. But that, yes, you're right. It also affects everybody in the family. And so they qualify to get help and to have community, to also, just like what we have learned to do, is to make step work a big part of our life, to lay this at the feet of Jesus in ways that we didn't think about before. Because yes, you lay your problems at the feet of Jesus, no question. But the way in which now we would approach that and what we learned was far different than the way we had been doing it. And I'm going to talk maybe a little bit here in a minute about a detachment and detaching with love. But let me just say right now, and some people will know what that means. Um, but you have to, when you yield that and you put it at the feet of Jesus, you have to also put yourself there.
Yeah.
And you can't, when you get up from that, you can't also take it back with you. You have
That's
to
right.
leave it there and leave yourself.
That's right. And I was actually thinking about how for siblings, it's really hard because they get angry, not just at what
Mm,
has happened with their sibling relationship, but sometimes they get
that's
angry for
hard.
their parents
Mhm.
who have to go through stuff that
That's
they
right.
should have never had to go through, or they feel like they shouldn't have. But it's crazy to say this, but having spent so much time around such beautiful parents who have walked through this journey, and some have not had the outcome. No one is promised the outcome
That's
of
right.
both their kids are reasonably good and reasonably well one day at a time. Some
Wow.
of the people we sit in rooms with in that basement every Tuesday night don't have their children anymore, but they're still coming back.
Mhm.
It's amazing. Some can't come back, and we get that if they lose their child.
Yeah.
I'm not telling all of your folks, be afraid that this is going to happen to you. You could
No.
lose your child. That is the scariest feeling.
Mm,
Here's the thing. Most of the time, that there's some form of recovery that happens,
yeah.
but there's a reality that we all know, if we have our eyes open, that sometimes things don't go that way. But what I want to tell people is that we're not mad. The thing about those people in that room is they're not angry.
Mm,
So the first thing that everyone needs to work on as a family is conquering that anger and turning that into grace. And that is super hard. And it does greatly tie into what Zane
yeah.
was talking about
Yeah.
detaching
Yeah.
in love.
And we're still doing it, by
We're
the
still
way.
doing it.
I
People
mean,
get angry.
guess what? We don't have your answers, and we're still seeking. You know, for us, it's been years of process to get to some of these things we're talking about today. And we're still attending those meetings. We're still working those steps. We're still working on materials that, daily
Help
and
us.
help us. But because we've learned that this is our journey and it's our recovery
Mhm.
and it's our peace and serenity that we're after.
That's so good. I'm gonna ask, because I do have other questions about what you learned and some of the tools that you used, but I think that these questions will lead into probably those things. And if you have anything to add, please do. But this one that I've here just says, at what point do you voice concerns, and how do you know when something is an issue?
Mm,
Yeah. You usually do see signs um, in a struggler, you'll find out that they've not been telling the truth about something. You'll find some evidence of some drugs or alcohol somewhere. You'll know.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is that, you know, I think from the time our kids we're all born with a rebellious spirit, rebellious spirit, right? And so from the we know when our toddler, they have a look on their face when
Right.
they went into the wrong cupboard
Yeah,
and
we're
got
born with the need for Jesus, right?
yeah,
Yes.
we are born with a need for Jesus.
Yes,
Oh my
we
word,
are.
that might be a song. I think I just started writing a song just now. But we are. But what I wanted to encourage people in is that, you'll know, but also, kind of setting boundaries when you start noticing things without saying you're doing
Yeah.
blah, 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 but just saying, we're not gonna go there tonight. And that's
Yes.
just what it is. But again, equipping yourself to have those answers because you're learning yourself how to react and respond is key.
Yeah. And let me say this. First of all, they're beginning to go down a road where addiction and alcoholism is going to be present in their life, they're not going to be able to hide it. And whatever you do find out, whatever information you're gathering from, seeing it on a cell phone or a friend or hearing or finding something, it's a lot worse than that.
Well, true. And that is
Yeah.
for the addict or the
Yeah.
alcoholic. But bearing
There's
in
so
mind
much more
that
information about it.
sometimes, children can test the waters as teenagers
Mhm.
and never fall into addiction or
Oh, for
alcoholism.
sure.
So
Yeah.
if you're
Hopefully by far and away, in
by
fact.
far and away. So
Yeah.
if somebody's watching and they're
Yeah.
like, I just found out my kid was drinking on Friday
Yeah.
night and I'm mortified. You
Yeah.
can set some boundaries. You can do what you need to do as a family and
Right.
pray as you need to pray. But also, don't decide that's absolutely
Yeah.
that, but just begin to equip
Yeah.
yourself slowly but surely for how you do need to respond
Right.
to the struggles that your kid will face,
Yeah.
because it's going to help them, and it's going to, once again, coming back,
Well,
it's going to help you, which helping you helps
yeah.
them.
And that's the good news, that even if you're a parent right now and you got little kids running around the house, and you're hearing a talk like this, it's kind of scary, and you get a little fearful. What would I do if that began to happen? Again, if you will see those signs become obvious at some point, if there's a real problem and the disease of this, what we've talked about, is happening. And the good news, though, is you're going to have a lot of tools. And as you can see today, we have walked this road. We know how hard it is and how difficult it is and how impossible it seems that anything's ever going to turn out good again.
Mm.
And we have gotten to the other side of that.
Mhm.
I would tell you, though, that we don't treat it as if it's done. We just treat it as one day at a time. And we're thankful today that God, for this moment, has arrested, this kind of thing in our kids' life. And we're thankful that for our journey, that we are in a better place, that no matter what would happen tomorrow, or next month or next year, we know we have better tools now to be able to navigate those waters.
Because our addiction can be being addicted to fixing somebody else, and that's not healthy.
Yeah. And so that's kind of a question I have, is like, what are some tools or even just conversations, I guess, you can have with your kids before it even becomes an issue? How can you kind of maybe, I guess, prevent in a way of bringing awareness without bringing awareness, if that makes sense?
That is such a great question. I think, having a great, having a, who has a great dialogue with their kids on the daily? I mean, I don't, son. Let's be
Especially
real
when they're
here.
teenagers.
Yeah, maybe it's being able to have some car conversations about, how was your day? What are you experiencing around you? And then if you say, man, if you ask your child to tell you something about their life and things they're experiencing, it helps for you to tell them something that you're experiencing.
Yeah.
Vulnerability with your child is important. We're as human as they are.
Yeah.
And we're as deeply flawed as humans as every other human, but as equally able to be healed and taught and molded by the Lord as anyone else as well. So, like, I think if you were to just kind of chat about, like, man, I've been
Mhm.
seeing a lot of this. What is your experience? I love learning from you, and kind of try to open up the conversation.
Yeah. But Carrie, let me take a part B to your question,
I love it.
because this is very important, and being able to understand those early days of when behavior may be going off the rails and things of that nature, identifying things that you can jump in and help with. But what we know is by this point is that we got to be careful, because one thing, we can just enable the heck out of everything, and it just goes. We start doing this, trying that, and we only end up making that worse. The second part of the question, though, that I would love to talk about is for those parents that they're already way down the road, and yet they have no peace, they have no place that they really understand what to do. We have this thing called news, weather, and sports. Really
I
good,
love it.
yeah, really good friend of ours.
Yes, I remember that.
So, and this is going to sound a little odd. I mean, we're going to admit that some of the things we have to tell you, you're probably going to have to really think about it.
I like it.
I'm not sure that makes sense. But when you get to a point when those conversations are just not happening,
They're raw.
they're
It's not
raw,
working.
it's not working, and I mean, it's all breaking
It's
loose,
just
right?
this instead of this with your kid.
So we learned that when we did this with our kids, and we've seen others that have done this, that we just keep those conversations when we're together about news, about weather, and about sports. Meaning that we're going to talk about everything else but the elephant in the room.
That's right.
And we're going to begin to dialogue again. We're going to begin to talk and live life together.
I
And we're not
love
always
that.
going to talk about the obvious things.
That's right. That's right.
But as a parent, that's so difficult to do, because you just want to go into the road and rescue them from the danger
Pull them back.
and pull them back. But what you will learn with this little tool is that connection that begins to grow. And I guarantee you, they'll walk away from the first time that you do that, and they'll go like, that was different. And
What in the world?
I figured they want to grill me on everything that I've been doing. And but no, keep it about news, weather, and sports.
Yep.
And I want your folks to remember that.
That's so
One of
good.
the-
Is how do you voice your concerns without being demeaning or condescending?
Mm.
That's a great question.
So I'm going to share a scripture right now, because this was the perfect question to come in there, because I think that love
Love.
it works every time, but it also works when you use it, I mean, a little bit as a tool. And that's a weird way of saying it, but there's a place where you have to learn this concept of detaching. And again, we go back to that serenity prayer, accepting the things that I cannot change. And so if you put in your mind real quick that probably time and time again, I keep saying, don't do this, or I want to see this, and it's not working, then have you considered that maybe you need to detach a little bit from the situation? And maybe you need to detach, not to detach for just detachment's sake, but you have to detach with love.
Yeah.
And in Philippians 4, and I'm going to read this because I want to get every word right, because even as we talk to the audience now and people that maybe have tuned in and they're really, struggling, and this really hits home to them. In Philippians, Paul wrote, now, if I said the scripture, I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. Everybody's like, oh yeah, I get
I know
that.
that
Yeah,
one. It's my fave.
I mean, if we memorize a verse, we got that one, right? Okay. But really, the scripture right before that, the verse before 13, is really the meat. And for us that have been on this recovery journey and have dealt with the insanity that happens, Paul said, I know what it is to be in need. And I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether I was well fed or I was hungry, whether I was living in plenty or in want. And then it says, I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. So today, our loved ones that might be dealing with things that we could never even comprehend, they may be in need. They may feel like they have plenty. But there's going to be these moments when they hit that rock bottom. And really, at the end of the day, what Don and I have to say to them is the only answer is, I can do all things through Christ. God is the answer.
Mhm.
That-
Jesus is the answer.
Exactly. And it comes back to what you
Yes.
said, Carrie, a minute ago, which was so wise. God, take over my body, my body.
Yeah.
That question that someone wrote in, that's exactly, God, take over my emotions. God, take
That's
over my
right.
body. God, lead me in. If this is one, let me do the serenity prayer check. Is this something I need? Is this something I can change? Is this something I need to have the courage to change? Or is this something I need to not address?
Yeah.
And God will give you that guidance. And it is your child. So there's the gray, right? We're supposed to be doing certain things. We're the parents. And so I think it's important to know your own boundaries in your family and to know what those are. And then to be, that is that,
Yeah.
very matter of factly, it is. We don't do that and we do this. But sometimes when you need to ask the question, sometimes you don't. But if you do broach it, you pray for God to give you the wisdom
Yeah.
to say what needs to be said
Yeah.
and the way that it needs to be said, and let everything be attached to love and detached with
Yes,
love.
right. And I want to say to the person that asked that question, by the way, I've done it over and over again. Over and over again, I've been condescending
Oh,
and
asked it
all of the
wrong.
things.
Yeah. Oh, haven't
Yes,
we all?
absolutely. And you will make mistakes
It's
and
okay.
over and over. But again, I just emphasize, get on your own journey, your own journey to recovery.
And
You're
the
going to
answers
see
will
the
come.
need of what you need recovery from.
Yes.
Yeah, that's so good because you're right. We're always going to make mistakes as parents. And I think it's so important though to be able to recognize that to our kids that we made a mistake. You know, hey, I didn't handle this the right way. I'm so sorry. And showing them that you're human, but also for them to learn to take accountability when they're wrong. I think that's so good. These next two they kind of go together with what we were kind of just talking about. But so it does ask, is there a point where you do the old tough love routine? But I'm going to ask a couple of these together because I think they'll kind of just
Yeah.
go together with your answer. And if we're supposed to be mirroring God's love and long suffering, how is cutting your kids off biblical or is it not?
Ooh,
So,
that's such a good
so the number
question.
one question that I probably have heard over our more than a dozen years in this journey that we've been on is, do I give them money? Do I not give them money? And we often feel like money is going to, be some kind of, yeah, it's the root of all evil, right? The love of money, that is. But for those parents and for the people that are on this journey, it is so hard. And when the road really gets hard, you talk about tough love, it comes to this point of, do I kick my kid out of my house if they are underage in living in the home? You know, and do I just keep tolerating the behavior because I
Yeah.
want to be safe? And here's the truth, as Donna said and described, when she first went into those rooms of community that she had found, that maybe here's some folks that are going through what I'm going through, so they must be able to tell me what to do, and they're going to give me the answers.
Yeah.
So here's the answer. I don't know whether you should give your kid money or not. I don't know whether you should kick them out of the house or not. That's not for me to decide, and quite honestly, it's gonna be hard for you to ever decide anything like that. So, it's important that, again, you do this in a biblical way. Yes, absolutely, and that's the beauty
Well,
of what
and
we've walked through is everything that we've ever learned, being a part of the church and being Christians, we've learned that the tools that we have now, they're so parallel.
yeah, and the question is so great. How is kicking your child out something that, you were trying to mirror what Jesus would do,
Mhm.
right? That's such a great question. But sometimes, you know, there had to be moments when, you know, the actual act of love is saying no. The actual act of love is saying, this is not good for our family for you to be here. It's disrupting our family. We don't feel safe. And we love you. And when you're
Good.
ready, we're ready.
That's good.
And we're waiting. But you're not able um to be where we need you to be here, but that doesn't mean we don't love you.
Mm.
It's really hard. It comes
It's
back
so
to
hard.
that detaching with love thing.
Right.
It's such a great question, but actually the act of, I know the word is tough love a lot that people say, and it is tough to go no, but it's also very loving, because remember, it comes back to that. You're giving them the dignity of their own recovery,
Right.
because people will tell you, me giving them a place to lay their head and giving them money and all of that, was the actual thing that kept them from recovery. When they
Yeah.
finally got out there and did that, this is
Right.
what made them. Now, I will tell you, there was a point in time where we were providing food for someone who was in a car, and that was where life was, and we were providing the food, so there wasn't starvation. That's gracious, but not a place to come back and to get into that pattern again, right? So I understand that that's
Mm,
hard, but
it
what
is.
has been true that Zane said is that each family needs to pray to God in their own way what God is leading them in. And as they take the journey of recovery themselves, they'll find the answers.
Yeah.
So
They will.
it's not a one answer kind of thing
No.
in
No.
that situation.
No.
The answers become clear as we grow and as we journey in our own recovery.
Right.
One quick thought is that, we may not be able to go with our child wherever they choose to go, but God is
Yeah.
with them
Boy, that's good.
wherever they go.
That's good.
And we need to remember that.
Yeah.
That when we don't know where they are, God does know where they are. He's never not known. And so allowing them and God the space to find each other is a beautiful thing sometimes. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do. It seems so unnatural, but it's a beautiful thing.
That's so good. And that he's their child too, you know?
Yes.
Good. Oh, I love that. I actually have one. I don't know if this is something you guys talk about, but um it's a sense of addiction where her boys are little and she's wondering how does she talk to her boys about pornography before it becomes an issue without making it an issue by harping on it. She goes on to say in the setting that she grew up in, sexual sin was talked about exhaustively because they wanted to guard us from it so much that it almost made it enticing.
Wow. Great question. And what a wonderful parent.
Yeah.
Whoever you are,
Yeah.
I hope we just thank you. And for each of these folks asking these great questions, thank you for having the heart to seek out these questions and try to find your way to the answers that are right for your family.
Well,
Golly,
it's a tough world to raise kids in.
It is.
It is. I mean, we all know that the devices and the things that they have access to now and the things that are happening and flashing in front of them so much more than, when Don and I were young. And I mean, we didn't have cell phones back then, right? So just these things are really challenging. There's no question. So my first recommendation would be to one, not to try to over parent.
Yeah.
I think that for us, once we got to a certain place in the challenging road we were on, you know, it's pretty natural to try to overparent. Like she said a minute ago, we're tracking their phones, and you're trying to predict where they're going to be, or the people that they're hanging around. You're going to try to control that, and that gets into the point where it's a vicious cycle, and if you're not careful, you begin just to overparent. But as I think about that, and you're right, we haven't talked about that a lot. But we do have grandkids now, and And
One of
actually,
them's 15, like
yeah,
your daughter,
yeah. And I will say this.
our oldest.
I will say this. This is a great point to make. We actually, in being a part of recovery groups that we are in, they have recovery groups for grandparents.
Grandparents.
Oh,
And,
wow, that's
and
Many
yeah,
of them raising, like your person who posed the question, who
yeah,
has your friend who's raising the child. Many of them raising their own
raising their
grandchildren.
kids, or just they just love their grandkids, and they're on the journey with them because they understand this is a family disease, and
yes.
a recurring theme that I keep saying. And but I would also encourage those that have young kids and they do have fear about the kind of world that they're growing up in, to try to challenge yourself to not overparent, and to know that, like we just said a minute ago, that God's got them.
Put the boundaries in place.
God's got them. Put the boundaries in place, and to some degree, let go and let God.
Yeah.
And this is a term that I've heard a lot in our Christian culture: let go and let God. And we had heard that, even as young people. But then when we got into recovery, we began to understand differently what it meant to let go and to let God. And then when you begin to context that,
Yeah.
it's just it took on a different meaning for us.
Absolutely. I love it. And I also, you need to share the 3 C's eventually. That's so good.
Yeah.
But I just thought, probably the greatest gift that we can give our kids when they're little and we don't want them to be exposed to things like that are gonna, you can't unsee the things that can't be unseen,
Mhm.
is by giving them so much to see that doesn't involve time to see that. And a lot of that means getting off of our own phones. It means, that people say luxury this and luxury that. What is a luxury is experiences with our children, experiences with our family. Those are luxuries, little precious luxuries. The more we get away from staring at a thing that is, distracting us, that we need that time with our things that we get from that, but also we need great boundaries on that for ourselves. And the more they see that,
Right.
the things they
That's
do
exactly
see are going to replace the things that they can't unsee.
right.
That's so good. Are there any other tools that you guys have learned and used that we haven't talked about that could help others? Yep, I see the smiles. I think so.
Tell them the 3 C's.
One message I would just give to them is something that I learned. I don't know if it's a tool as much as it is just a concept that will help you change your thought patterns. You didn't cause this. You can't control it.
Mm.
Can't cure it.
Yeah.
You didn't cause this problem. You may think that, well, what if I
would
had,
have done that, if I
I
hadn't
did
done
this
that.
differently? Or let me tell you, if you're in a place where you're affected by this family disease that we know of, being an addict and alcoholic, then let me tell you, you did not cause it.
Mm-mm.
The next piece, you can't control it,
Mhm.
because no matter how many times you say no, no matter how many times you say, I'll do this if you will do this, you beg and you do that bartering system, it's not going to control it. You may have some temporary success and you may think, okay, I figured it out. Promise you, you can't control it, because you can't be the one to cure it.
Not them.
You won't be the one to
God
cure
will.
it, but God will do the work.
Mhm.
They have to be willing to say, I am powerless over this disease and my life is completely unmanageable.
Step
Now, that's step one. And let me give the tool. So here's the tool. You want to say it?
No, you go ahead.
Step one. So when and folks, this didn't happen in the first month.
We're giving you like how many years of Al-Anon in 1 hour?
It feels like
You're like, what has
when
to be?
Fast-forward
you
version.
tell a story, it feels like, oh yeah, we just almost immediately knew how to do this.
We're good. We're good.
And hey, I went to probably 6 years,
Wow.
6 years of attending a meeting weekly, sometimes 2 and 3 meetings a week, because they're available. People are going through this, and they're all around your community. And I don't care where this broadcast is going. There's people around you that are going through what you're going through.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And there's a community that you can find that will help you learn what we learned. But I did that for 6 years, and I didn't even think about working the steps. I didn't even get to the place I thought, "Well, do I have to do that?" And then suddenly I realized I want to work the steps myself. And then when I went through that first one, I can't I am powerless over this. Powerless. I'm like, "Yeah, I can identify with being powerless over, uh, addiction."
Mhm.
And I can also identify with my life has become unmanageable. My goodness, it was off the rails, out of control. And that was the start. That was the
Okay.
start. And maybe you need to be the one to start right there.
But then you get to step 2 and it says, came to believe.
And the power greater than
Power greater
myself
than myself, God,
could restore me to sanity.
sanity. And that is the thing we lose when we are parents and we're scared, but
Mm.
we can find that again. There's so many great tools. I think that the best thing, if we could give you one to take away, it is to find a community. Since it's unlikely you're going to get a casserole at your door,
Mm.
find a community. Since it's hard and it feels lonely sometimes and sometimes embarrassing to tell, find a community and listen to their stories, their experiences, strength, and hope.
Then so many years later, we begin to understand why we learned the phrase, keep coming back. It works if you work it.
That's really good. And I think that's even encouraging for people maybe watching that aren't going through this, but maybe you know somebody that is, maybe to go give them a casserole or just go in.
Yes, start bringing each other casseroles. Start if you don't, you're not struggling, and you do have a friend who's confided they are. Bring them a casserole, 100%, and amen.
Well, I do know that through all of this, that something else good that has come out of it is something called Everything Good that came out May 31st, which is your new album, which I believe has 12 songs on it, right? That you both produced. And this kind of came about with your journey of walking with your two children. Can you tell us a little bit more about this?
So we have a song on there called From the Basement to the Altar. And if somebody pulls one up really quick on their streaming platform, Zane and Donna King, you can find us about everywhere. From the basement to the altar. It's really talks about hitting that basement. It talks about that church it's in the basement and the journey that we've taken ourselves of hitting that basement and being at a place where it felt like nothing was ever going to go right again. And then we came to God through His grace and found that altar and found help and hope in Christ. But then Donna, I mean, there's a lot of fun songs on there, but the one that I love that you talk about with who you listen to.
Well, that and I wrote a song with 2 of my dear girlfriends called Who You Listen To, which can be a tool to share with your teenagers or your own self to kind of help us center our worth and our value. Because I think part of the reason that people slip away is that they don't believe in their value and their worth and their and how loved they are in the eyes of God, that He created them in His image. And so if people want to hear a song that they can share with their kids, just to kind of lay the foundation, that is called Who You Listen
Yeah.
To. And there's another one
Yeah.
for those praying and praying and praying and don't have the answers, and it's called Wait for It.
Yeah.
And then we have a lot of fun songs on there. We really love for people to tap their feet and smile and laugh. And we do our music to to feel with a beat so that you just feel like you're getting a
Big
happy
hug.
hug, a happy hug.
Aw,
And
I love
so we hope that people feel a happy hug. It's got a little kind of a country
But-
vibe, but they're kind of a folksy, kind of acoustic country vibe. But we hope that people will find some words and some hope in the lyrics that can help them kind of walk their journeys.
And I'll just mention one last thing there on that with finding us on zaneanddonnaking.com. That's our website, of course, and our music's on platforms. But honestly, if people would love for us to come and share our story, share our music, they can reach out to us about doing that. In 2020, next year, we're going to be traveling a lot. And so we love the opportunities to come and to
Meet ya.
meet, sing, and actually hug people. So
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Well, if you're in Michigan, let me know because I would love to just see you guys in person.
Ah, All right, you better believe we
You
will.
guys have been such a blessing with sharing your testimony, and I feel like you're gonna be on again because I know that this is gonna be well, I want to have you on again, but I know that this is gonna reach so many people that are gonna probably have more questions because
Love that.
people are searching, and so we'd love to have you back on. But one question that I like to end with everybody that I have on, which if you watch the show, you might know, is how I and just people at home can pray for you too.
Yeah,
That's an awesome
we
question.
have some things.
Yeah.
We have some.
Do I need to write these down?
You know what? Pray we see God moving in a powerful way in our ministry right now in this area.
Yeah.
Pray for two things. Pray that we will stay out of the way and the devil will stay out of the way. What we have recognized as we've been going out and sharing and singing is that when the Lord, I told a friend this the other day, I said, when God's at work, the devil's at work, but thankfully God is billions and millions and uncountable ways greater and more powerful. And so we pray for God to get the victory, that the obstacles that want to come along in the way, like it's not, I know your listeners might be, well, I'm talking about like there's been some health struggles. For me, I have an arrhythmia. So I actually had right 2 minutes before a television interview that was live, I went into the arrhythmia, and I had to call 911. So, but I'm okay and all is okay. But then another time, the internet went completely out. It never
Yeah.
has for this particular interviewer ever, and it did. So we were all like, that's just the devil. So
Yeah.
we're like telling the devil, get thee behind me. And we ask your listeners to pray with us for that, and that we will just be pliable in the hands of God as God is forming and shaping and continuing to unfold ways that we can help other people. This is what we want more than anything. And so if we could just ask folks to pray alongside us, that we would be able to be effective in helping others to journey through such a tough thing.
Absolutely. I believe in what you're doing. I was so touched today. And I just prayed for that and you've provided encouragement for me and I just think the world of you too and I just really appreciate you sharing your story and I just hope that people watch this and they find some encouragement as well if they're going through this or if they know somebody going through this and I would just be honored to have you guys on again in the future. So thank you so much for chatting with me. It was an honor.
We would so love to come back, and thank you so much for having us. We are so grateful, Carrie.
Absolutely. And make sure you all go check out Zane and Donna King and their new album, Everything Good. And thank you so much for watching Abundant TV. And just to remember, until next time, to carry on.